I mean, I tried that in the first couple of months. I was like, cool, how can I do this? What can I do? But it was just a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of business owners that I speak with or hear from, they're going through that process. So like, cool, I've heard of, ChatGPT, or I've heard of Claude, or I've heard of the Claude, the Claude recording device, and the pins and everything else. But it's like, I don't know how to use it. So I'm just going to get it and figure it out. And they'll go through that same process I went through, and then get to the end and go, well, I'm frustrated. I don't understand it. This is a new technology. Maybe I'm too old. It's too much information. And they just kind of give up, just like I did.
Rick, welcome to the first episode of AI-powered accountants, right? So the whole point of this is to empower, educate accounting people, accountants, finance leaders, and also business owners as to how we can be more effective using AI, right? So my background, I'm a CPA, I'm an accountant, I moved into tech, so I'm sort of sitting in between, understanding accounting and understanding some of tech. And I can see accounting being an industry that is sort of lagged a bit behind with technology, right? And we're sort of seeing the passing of the guard now with some of the older practitioners to the younger practitioners, and there is an appetite for AI. So we want to be at the forefront of having those conversations and educating people, right? So if you don't mind, if you can do a brief introduction about yourself and your business, a bit about yourself, your story, and your interest in AI.
Yeah, sure. So Rick Bazerghi. So I've got two businesses at the moment. One is called Meir. So it's a premium tapware business that sells coloured tapware all over the world. Okay. I think we've got around 2,000 retailers or something.
Wow, okay.
And the second is the Smash Room. So if anyone hasn't heard of the Smash Room, it's just a place where you can get dressed up in safety gear, you grab a bat, and you literally just smash everything inside.
It's so much fun.
Yeah. Have you been?
I haven't been, but some of the guys in the team have suggested as a Christmas function. I think I've been in touch with you.
Sounds good.
But it will be on the list for us for sure.
Yeah. So 2 venues in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And speaking to a guy now to help me break into the Sydney market. So the goal is really to have about 12 of these venues around Australia. And without going too deep into this, I mean, when you walk into a Smash Room and you just see people walk out of the room, the one thing that just stands out above everything else is that these people are smiling, they're laughing, and to know that I can put a smile on their face is just incredible. It's so gratifying. So it's a massive passion project of mine, and I'd love to see it thrive. But Meir is my full-time business. The Smash Room I'm completely hands off. So it's full under management.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
And then what are my AI interests? So I remember probably about a year ago, we had a group of business owners come together, and we ended up getting an AI specialist in to talk about how AI can be leveraged in business. And at that time, this is when I think ChatGPT kind of first really kind of came out, people were using it. And I thought to myself, I've heard of this, I've heard of AI, and I don't really understand it. I've tried looking on YouTube, and I've tried looking on people on LinkedIn and influencers, and the content that I'm consuming isn't really relevant for what I need, and I don't know what I need, right? So I think that through my journey, I've realized that a lot of people in AI and automation, they'll say, it's great for solving a problem that you have. So I went on a rampage going, what are the problems I want to fix? And I was so new to AI that I just didn't know where to start. So I recognized that I kind of really just crawled before I could walk. And the pursuit of me trying to claw information and look for it without any specific purpose was a complete waste of time. And looking back, I kind of went through maybe a 3-month process of just going, well, I don't know anything more about AI than when I started with, so I'm just going to stop. And then organically, I was like, okay, well, maybe this problem that I'm facing now, that's an actual problem, AI could assist with this solution. So then I specifically went around looking to use of AI to solve that problem. And then that kind of allowed me to really just take the first step into understanding what's an LLM, what are the tools out there, who are the thought provokers, who are the trailblazers, and then went on my own kind of journey. And I think it was because I was passionate about solving that one problem that I ended up loving loving the whole journey.
Yeah.
And I think that was about a year ago. And now I probably spend about 4 hours a day on AI-related tools. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
It's really interesting you mentioned that. So, because of ChatGPT and everything happening with AI, everyone's like AI. But your approach is more, here's a problem, how can I adopt AI, right? Rather than going the other way around, going, take this AI and put it in my business somewhere.
I mean, I tried that in the first couple of months. I was like, cool, how can I do this? What can I do? But it was just a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of business owners that I speak with or hear from, they're going through that process. So like, cool, I've heard of, ChatGPT, or I've heard of Claude, or I've heard of the Claude, the Claude recording device, and the pins and everything else. But it's like, I don't know how to use it. So I'm just going to get it and figure it out. And they'll go through that same process I went through, and then get to the end and go, well, I'm frustrated, I don't understand it, this is a new technology, maybe I'm too old, it's too much information, and they just kind of give up, just like I did. So that's what kind of I'm seeing. Are you seeing something similar?
Yeah, I mean, even with us as a business, right? Like, every day we use AI, right? For different things around the business, and the way we try and implement it is very similar to yours. I'm like, okay, which of these problems can I automate? Or which of these problems can I use AI? And what are the tools out there to use AI, right? Educating ourselves on the latest tools, going to seminars, all that sort of stuff. Like, I think as business leaders, being at the forefront and understanding it and playing around with it gives you a lot more context, right? Even when chatting to your teams.
Yeah.
For us, it's even harder because we have a team here, then we have a team in Sri Lanka, right? We've got about 100 developers there.
Can I pause you for a second? You said a really interesting word before. You said automate. So what I recognize, and this actually might be really good for people who are also in that kind of space where they don't necessarily know how to utilize AI. And I intentionally avoided the word automate when I was thinking about that problem I want to solve. So the word automation, what I've recognized is quite a scary word, because it's in that 3-month phase where people go, well, how do I automate? I've heard of this buzzword automate. How do I make it more efficient? How do I make it quicker? And through speaking to other business owners where they're saying, okay, well, I'm trying to find a problem to solve, or I'm trying to automate. And I find it really hard for people to be able to answer that question without understanding what does it actually mean. So can we break it down, and you can just, at the bare level, for people who maybe have kind of played around with ChatGPT or have heard of Claude or have heard their staff member talk about AI, what does automate actually mean? Layman's terms.
Yeah, so for me, in my context, right? For example, I've got an online posting schedule with, say, my LinkedIn.
Yep.
Right? So, I used to spend a large part of my time sitting down, writing things down, doing my research, all that sort of stuff, right? So building a process that requires a very minimal amount of my time is, for me, automation, right? Now a process that takes maybe 5 hours a week takes 30 minutes.
What does that look like in practice? How do you do it now compared to how you used to do it?
Yeah, so, previously I would go onto Google, I would research the top topics in accounting and AI. Then I would read those topics, I would summarize those topics, I would add my thoughts, I would rewrite that.
Manually,
Manually putting it together. Whilst now I can use AI to go, give me the top 5 topics in AI and accounting right now. Summarize those topics for me.
And what do you use? If we can kind of maybe break it down step by step, what platform would you use to do that?
So right now I'm using a custom GPT on ChatGPT. So I've effectively set it up to understand my tone of voice, how I respond, and how I want it to respond. I've also fed it, say, 6 months of my posts and blogs, so it understands my style of writing.
Can we come back to that later?
Sure.
Yeah, cool.
Sure. And the first thing I do is, I think, I've spoken about this before with content, it's getting AI to condense and get topics together, and then it's adding my own thoughts and views on it. So I now start speaking to my phone, I'd start recording and transcribing. Okay, this is my view on this topic, this is how I see it going, and this is what I feel. The industry is changing in this way. And then I put both of that content together and I use AI to create something, right? So I think that's really important, that you don't just take something from AI and post it. I think the algorithms start to pick these things up as well. Whilst, I'm using AI to just save me the time from doing all this research, I get those topics, I add my views and condense like a hybrid. sort of content.
And do you use the voice command on ChatGPT?
Yeah.
Okay, so you get the topics and you physically look at the screen.
Yeah.
Or you take it from and then you have it somewhere else and then you open up the voice.
Voice command,
Yeah.
or just chat to it. Also, these are my views. Now create a hybrid article on this. Then I'd read through that and make any changes. So I try and personalize it, but it's taking me a lot less time right now. So that's just one area of, it's just saving me a couple hours.
And then once you feed it your response, it'll then curate its own response based on your views. So
My tone of voice, my views, and my history, because
Yep.
I'm using a custom GPT.
Yeah, and then you take that final piece of content and then what do you do with it?
So I take that, I clean it up, make any changes to make sure it sounds like me and it is authentic to myself. And then I'm posting it, I'm setting it up on LinkedIn. I'll schedule it based on a particular time, say on a Wednesday at 9:30. Based on our marketing team, they'll go, these are the best times to post, and it's all scheduled.
There was something really powerful you said then, which you understand the nuances of how to get the best out of that particular process. And I think what I see, and even I'm guilty of this, is expecting AI tools to just be the be all and end all and solve everything. So I think for anyone who is going on a journey of learning how they can implement it in their life, I think appreciating that it's there as a tool to accelerate your own abilities, but doesn't replace you as a solution. So the fact that you've invested time to build the GPT, to understand your tone of voice, your language style, your pitch, your grammar, and then you also understand that you then need to add more context after you've asked it to produce content. And that's super important, is that, even people where I've worked with have said, I've followed this particular guide, I've done that, and the output still doesn't work as well as I want it to work. So I think Microsoft came up with a really good name as Copilot. And I think you can't really use AI tools independently, like to a certain point in the future that it's got to be quite independent. But at the moment, if you think about AI as your co-pilot, and every move that you do in a plane, they're obviously responding for that same move. And you can't just turn left and then expect it to just take over and land. Like, you're going to have to turn left, let it turn left with you, turn right, let it turn right with you. So it was really good for walking through that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's like really interesting, right? Like, because exactly the same point you make, because people think AI is going to come and replace jobs fully. It's just going to come, in our view, it's just going to come and do the tasks, the tasks that take you a lot of time, the admin tasks, the tasks that, your research tasks for now.
Can I talk about that for a second?
Yeah, sure. Tell me.
Because one of the things that a lot of people ask me is, they don't ask me, they actually say, and my assistant actually says this as well. I said, how do you feel about, where we're at today in terms of using AI? And I asked her yesterday, and she said, I'm scared of the jobs it's going to take. And even though I've shared my views on this with her before, it's still that inherent belief, just because of the influences that are happening around us. So I want you to, and I think anyone who is maybe seeing AI as in a negative way, specifically about job taking, let's think of this, right? So forgive me if I got the years wrong. Let's say 1800s, 1850. Horse and cart got introduced. So let's pick a topic. Wheat farming. So you've got a sickle and you're on the wheat farm. So just visualize, you've got like 20 people, farming and just harvesting a crop with sickles. Horse and cart comes in and maybe they cuts it down by about a quarter. Maybe now instead of say 20 or 50, maybe there's 10. So in that transition, the introduction of that particular technology was scary, same as what we're going through now. So this horse and cart's going to take over jobs. This is manual, but at that pivotal point, maybe those people aren't necessarily skilled to be able to do anything else. But their children who are coming in are now using horse and carts, right? So there's no job losses for their children, but there's a shift and there's a transition for the people that are only skilled in one particular thing. So fast forward then from horse and cart to tractors. So 1920s or something, I can't remember. Again, dates wrong. Tractors come in, what goes from 10 on a field goes to 1 on a field, right? So huge uproar in the media. It's going to take jobs. But if you look back, you don't even remember that pivotal time when farmers who were doing the horse and carts went upskill to control the tractor. So why is now any different? Why is now different to the industrial age, revolution age, stone age, computer age, technology age? Why is now a larger influence or a larger emphasis on job taking when we've gone through this transition a dozen times before? So I think what we're going to find is that there's an emphasis on it's going to make people more efficient, and it makes me more efficient. I did a presentation for my leadership team, which took me about 2 days, and that would take me about 6 months without AI. Like literally 6 months. It was a complete restructure of the strategy of the business. So it's going to make me more efficient. Now, I wouldn't hire someone to do that. So it's not replacing a job. It's making me be able to do more as a leader. But if you think about the actual implementation of this in the real workforce, it will replace jobs because instead of 10 people doing a task, it can be done by 2. So those other 8 people now have to be able to go, how do I upskill? How do I become same as the sickle farmers, where now I need to learn how to ride a horse? So with the introduction of that technology back in those days, output of wheat increased, which meant consumption could increase, so population increased, civilization could actually grow. So we have a consumption problem at the moment, but apart from that, if you think about that form of transition, the people that are worried about losing jobs should really be thinking about how do they upskill. Mark Cuban posted a post on social media the other day, I think 2 days ago, and went viral, and he said if he was 21 again today, he would do nothing other than consume AI for 24 hours a day.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously he's in that space and he understands the appreciation, but I really think that, and this is probably going to rub some people up the wrong way, but I think that the employee mentality has always been like I'm the victim. But the fact is that employers simply choose to take the steps so that they can't get into a position in the future where they are victimized. How can I take control of my life, my destiny, my business, my relationships, so that I'm maximizing the output? And if employees are thinking about losing their jobs and they take that same mindset and saying, how do I protect my future? You can do that by upskilling. So consuming content, such as what you're trying to do now, learning, being passionate, playing games with it. Can I keep going on a different topic? My daughter is 18 and she was about to study biochem.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So she wanted to study biochem at Monash, I think. And I don't have political views. I don't have religious views. I'm very neutral on everything. And I don't like ever to put my views on anyone else. And in the same token, I appreciate if nobody puts their views on me. So it was really hard for me to actually sit down with my daughter, and I had a conversation with her a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I think it would be irresponsible of me to allow you to go to uni, because regardless of what you're studying to be a profession is, that in 5 years or in 7 years, I don't know if the job that you're actually thinking you're applying for is going to be there. It could be there, but even if it's in, I think she loves DNA splicing, for example. And if you think about that field, there's a lot of AI implementation in it. But instead of it being 10 people in a lab, it could be one person in the lab. Yeah. Or it could be a really good prompt engineer rather than somebody who knows. And sure, you have to learn the topic, like accounting. You can't necessarily run an accounting firm, even with the most strongest AI, without a basic level of understanding about accounting. But as a parent, if I was in her shoes now, if that was me as an 18-year-old, what's the best chances of success in the world that we're entering into? And it's studying AI. So I said to her, my role as a parent is to give you the tools and resources so that you can succeed in the upcoming world. So the power to be able to socialize, the power to be able to understand and regulate your own feelings, your own emotions, to be able to say yes more than no. And by putting her in situations such, she's a performer, she's a singer, so putting her in situations like performing at Federation Square, not for money, but really just being up in front of people, allows her to increase her confidence, not in an egotistical or cocky way, but these are the building blocks that I've given her in her life so that she can maximize her life opportunities. So why wouldn't I do that with AI? Why would I let her go to university to learn something that could potentially be redundant in 3 or 4, 5 years?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I love how you mentioned prompt engineering, because, potentially a new role that's going to emerge in all of this, right? So back in the 80s, when computers came around, mainstream, there's a graph that I saw the other day where you had all these accountants, the number of accounting jobs just went from here down here because all the bookkeeping, sort of condensed.
Yeah.
But it created these new jobs as analysts. So you lose jobs with technology, but it creates these new jobs.
Yeah.
And prompt engineering is something I keep hearing, and we understand the importance of it because AI is only as good as the data and the prompt you give it.
Can I pull on that thread for a second?
Yeah.
So maybe for people who are fairly new to AI, what does that actually mean in terms of what it means to you? So what is the importance of a prompt engineer? What does that actually mean in practice?
So for us, even in the very basic terms, prompt engineering is teaching and continually teaching.
Without that, what are some of the problems that people could face? What are the differences between having a really good prompt, for example, keeping it basic, very good prompting and very basic prompting? What are the kind of differences that people can experience?
I think if you don't really have very specific prompting, the data and your results are quite generic. That's what we're seeing, right? It's because you're reading from these large models of data, right? And if you can prompt a model really well, you're going to be very specific in how you answer a particular.
I think about prompt as people on Earth, and the information source being space. So it's vast, it's got an immense amount of content, and every time that there is a prompt, imagine a beam of light coming from Earth going up into space. And it's saying, well, I need to find information and I've only got a short amount of time and I can't give you all the information because some of it contradicts itself. So I'm going to pull together what I first find, what I think is most logical based on how I'm built and in the current performance of LLMs, right? And it brings it back down to earth. And I feel like, and I have this analogy in my head, and I feel like with good prompting, you add an ozone layer around the earth. You basically give it a filter to go through, so that instead of it having its own path in space trying to find something random, you're giving it specific things and saying, look in this part of space, look over there and get me that information. So it's able to come back to something more accurate. And I would always classify myself as the smartest dumb person you've ever met, right? So every time somebody explains something about what you do or how this works, I have no idea. But if I can break it down into a really basic analogy and I go, oh, okay, I get it. It's a beam of light going to space.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with how it is.
Yeah.
But those kind of analogies can make it a bit easier for people to kind of digest, I think. So keep going. So you've got the kind of basic prompting and good prompting.
Yeah.
And
what are your views on it, and how would you sort of, in the work that you're doing, right, in your businesses, do you use a lot of AI? Like, because you've got two very different businesses.
Yeah. So there's no AI used in the Smash Room at the moment. It's a very simplistic business. I mean, people go online, they make a booking, they enter the venue. There's physical helmets, physical gear. They go in, they smash stuff, they go home, they have fun. Bookkeeping is simple, customer service is simple. We've got literally one person that manages all emails, live chat, phone calls. So it doesn't really need AI implementation. With my other business, we have about 45 staff members and segmentation across all departments. And we're going through a huge growth spurt at the moment. So we've grown from like 3 customer service people to 8 customer service people in the last year. And it's a case of just throwing heads at a problem. So my role is to kind of balance the growth of the business and make sure that we're not overcapitalizing on expenses just to erode the bottom line. So I see AI automation implementation in the business to be able to make that bottom line healthier. Not to line my pockets, but to be able to do more in the business, right? So if we can be 15% profitable in a year, we can do a lot more than being 5% profitable. If I can do that I mean, there's obviously many ways you can do that, but if AI can help us get there, then it's something that I should definitely consider or be aware of. So we use it in a few different ways. One particular area we're using it at the moment is to assess warranty claims. So it's a tap, right? It's a kitchen tap, bathroom tap.
Yeah.
So let's say something happens and, touch on wood, our warranty rates are very low, but if something happens to a tap, it's a very technical type product. And it's not just saying like an iPhone, the screen stopped working. Our staff have to consider what is the reported problem and then do root cause analysis. And that can sometimes change based on the information the customer's giving us. So it's also based on how much knowledge that staff member has. And unless someone's a technical expert with taps, which is pretty rare, it's hard for us to get to the root cause quickly, accurately, and help the customer.
Yeah.
So what we've done, similar to what you mentioned before, is that you've fed your conversations and your posting into your custom GPT. We've done a similar aspect. We've created a custom GPT that's then automated through a bot that we can then interact with. So my customer service team has actually has a bot that has 10,000 situations in the last 10 years. 10,000, I think 1,000 situations. Gee, we don't have that many warranties. Now 1,000 situations. And every time a warranty claim comes through the business, we only ask for the basic information, images, brief description of the situation. And if we're really to extract, the staff member will call and extract. We put it into the bot and we say, here's the situation, here's a photo. What are the next steps? It accesses all the technical data sheets, which is essentially like an exploded drawing of the product. It shows each part component and it knows what they do. So if you pull a tap out, it'll have maybe 350 components, right? Rubber O-rings and screws and pieces of brass. So as it pulls it out, the LLM's able to look at it and say, based on what's happening in the customer's video or image, it's most likely the O-ring at that point that's failing. And it knows that because of all the past situations that we've actually gone through root cause analysis in a long period of time. And when we introduced it about 4 months ago, I remember we road tested it with one customer warranty claim. And my operations manager, who's been with me for 6-7 years, absolute gun with this kind of stuff, looked at it and said, oh, it's part number 17. But the bot said it was part number 4. So he then asked the engineer, who's also part of the designing of the product, said, oh no, it's part number 17. So they went through the process thinking the AI was wrong. They got to the end and they realized it was part number 4.
Wow.
The AI bot got it right, and 2 of my staff members who knew the product like the back of their hand got it wrong.
That's scary.
Yeah, so things like that it's just a snippet of how it can be used. And sure, it gets it wrong sometimes, and there's human intervention that's needed. But it's basically like, I think of this, and here's another analogy. Imagine having a football field full of experts, and you're in the middle of the field, and you have a problem, you have a question, right? And my staff member says, oh, I've got this customer set this tap, and this is the issue. And all of a sudden in the field, you just hear whispering. They're looking to the left, they're discussing, and then one person stands up, collectively has the answer and says, this is your problem. This is what I feel is what we have at our fingertips. We have the brains of the smartest people in the world collectively answering uniform in a split second.
That's powerful. Yeah, that is powerful. And you love your analogies. I think that's amazing, right? Because you're right. Because if you're not immersed in AI, sometimes you just need to understand it that way, right?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding and appreciation of AI, I feel like I'm definitely not the right person to be talking about AI because I know so little. But I'm passionate about it because I really thoroughly enjoy it. And that didn't happen from the beginning. It happened as I slowly started to learn about AI and just pulled on a bit of a thread. And I would hear other people and how they used AI in their business. And I was like, that's cool. Imagine if I could do that. Well, I can't, but that's cool. And then I hear someone else saying they did this and they solved that and they solved this. So just being exposed to it allowed me to be able to consume more. I mean, you talked about social media before, right? So you can curate and engineer the content that gets delivered to you. Right? So let's say I'm following your post on LinkedIn and Instagram, and I watch your video from start to finish. That's like 3 ticks on Instagram. They're going to go, well, if somebody viewed this video all the way through, it's either because they've left their phone on their desk and they haven't really consumed it, and they'll measure it. But if I watch it all the way through and then I move to the next slide, that's a massive tick. It's saying I'm genuinely interested in your content. So then it's going to say, well, maybe I'll give it another influencer's AI and I'll feed that to him. And if he really likes that one as well, I'm onto something. So I've engineered my social media intentionally by even consuming content that I'm not necessarily interested in, but I know that if I watch it all the way through or let it sit on the desk and then like it and then scroll, right? I know that eventually I'm going to have a feed full of AI, and I mean, I'm into personal development as well. So AI and personal development. And every time I get, I don't know, girls dancing on a boat, quickly skip through, because the moment I stop with that, I'm going to get more girls dancing on a boat.
Yeah.
So I've specifically engineered, and I think that's super powerful, is that you don't necessarily need to go out and find content, YouTube, LinkedIn, you don't need to look for it. And having, especially that first 3-month period where you're like, I don't know how to use AI, I'm going to look for something. You can slowly build your environment so that this information comes to you. The red car, have you heard of the red car theory?
Tell me.
So the red car theory, let me ask you, how many red cars did you see today?
I've heard of this. I don't remember, but if I thought about it and I looked for it, I'll see a lot more, right?
Exactly. So I take this red car theory to the next stage. So a lot of people have heard the red car theory, or the girl in the red dress. So I've engineered my life so that red cars drive towards me. I don't have to look for them anymore. So that I understand the nuances of social media. I understand the nuances of how marketing, how brands work. And I'm able to look at something and say, is the message they're trying to, is the call to action they're trying to make me do, or the action they make me do, am I compelled to do that thing? And by understanding that from a psychological marketing perspective, I can look at all content, social media or not, and then start to engineer it so that all the red cars are now coming here. So if I want to learn a particular topic, AI, then the first thing I'm going to do is, how do I look for those red cars? Because if I hear about AI, it's one thing. I'm going, shit, now I need to be on all the time. Sorry, swearing, right? But the red car theory is limited in the fact that you have to always be on. You have to be looking for those red cars. And it's exhausting because as a leader or as a accounting firm owner, you've got to go, well, how do I keep up with, I've got to do my tax banter, mandatory stuff, but how do I keep up with what's going on in the world? And to be able to always be on, I'm like, oh shit, I've missed that opportunity, or I've heard that, I didn't hear that person speak. But knowing that you can curate your social media so that red cars come to you is like the final piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, that's really cool, the fact that you're prompting the algorithms. So you're actually prompt engineering the algorithm.
Teaching it.
Go, teach me, this is what I want to see. I want to see this for longer, so I want to see more of that. I want to see less of this, so I don't see much of that. That's amazing.
It's you have to be very disciplined with it because, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn are the 3 platforms I use. And it's easy to open up social media when you're in the toilet, right? And just consume some bullshit kind of content, right? But as soon as you do that, right, you've got like 100% curated content towards your needs, or say 95 because something slipped through. The moment you trip up and watch that new content that's unrelated, it could be, I don't know, somebody falling over on a bike, or it could be a surfer that even if you're not interested in surfing. The moment that happens, you're losing your power of that, of controlling your environment. So if you want to use social media as a platform to improve your skills in any field, especially AI, you just have to think about intentionally picking up the phone and going, I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes on social media, and all I'm going to do is scroll through really quickly on anything that's not related to AI, and everything that is, I'm going to like it, I'm going to watch it. And if you do that for a few days, you'll notice that your social media account is going to completely transform.
Wow, okay, I'm going to try that today. All right, so Rick, what are the top tools you're using right now? Top 3 AI tools you would use every day?
So I've just stopped using Claude. Have you heard of Claude? So I've just stopped using Claude. And
Just for our users who don't know what Claude is.
yeah, sure. So Claude is a physical recording device. So people have heard of the Rabbit pin or the Rabbit Note or whatever it is that kind of sits on your chest and it just hears your environment. Great in concept, but hard to execute efficiently. So kind of ahead of its time. So Claude is a similar device that either sticks to the back of your phone or you can use it as a necklace around and it works as a removable pin and you can put the pin anywhere on the table. So it's similar to recording, if you have an iPhone, you have voice memos, similar to recording voice memos, similar to a note taker such as Otto or TLDV. The good thing about Claude is that you don't actually have to open up the voice command, you don't have to press record, and you don't have to schedule a meeting and add Zoom recording or Google Meets or anything else.
So it's convenient, right?
It's purely just convenience. So you would physically stop or start playing on the Claude device, and it syncs to your phone. Not only does it transcribe your entire conversation, but it also gives you summary and then some additional AI tools. So if there's to-dos from your meeting, so if you're having a team meeting or if you're meeting with a client, for example, if from an accounting firm, you can have a Claude device on the desk. It'll record the entire conversation between you and the client. It's saved locally. You can actually change, you can modify the settings. So from a privacy perspective, saves locally. And it can say, John Smith recognized that he had 1.1 million of EBIT. You've discussed that the distribution models are option A, B, and C. He selected option C, and that's your note taker essentially.
It's powerful though, as an accountant. Like, say you've got a meeting with clients, right? Just summarizing that meeting, sending something back to a client. That's pretty powerful.
Well, it's also pretty cheap. I think the Claude phone device was about 198 on sale at JB a couple of weeks ago. So for $200 to be able to get that. But it's the steps you do after that point. So you've got these notes, you've got the takeaways, you've got the summary. You need to be able to actually use the data. So it's fine to have all these fancy tools, right? AI, LLMs, Claude devices, but are you actually using it to its fullest extent? Because I've been guilty of this. I'll record a session and then I never get back to it.
Yeah.
So as an accounting firm, I think it's very easy to set up a process to say every meeting is going to have a Claude device in the room, and you can have it fixed on every single desk.
Yeah.
And sync to let's say client director phone, and then this room is synced to this phone, and then after every meeting, 15 minutes you're scheduled to save it in a particular source. Let's say Dropbox, Google Drive. You've heard of a data lake. Most people haven't heard of a data lake, and if you have a data lake, great. It can be implemented and uploaded to your data lake. So by extracting the information that you've obtained and saving it and storing it for later use is super important, because if it's fragmented, if you're working with this LLM or if you've created this custom GPT, you don't really know where everything is. When the time comes for you to go, okay, cool, how can I really use this to my advantage? It's fragmented, it's broken, and you have to kind of start again. So maintaining and really understanding how you can leverage it for greater efficiency is super important. You don't have to know from day one. You can get a Claude device today, start using it and go, oh, you know what? Where is it saved? I forgot. And then evolve and adapt that process over time. But that can happen really quickly. You just have to be conscious of it.
Yeah. Okay. So are you still using Claude, or you said you've stopped?
I've just stopped using Claude because the iOS voice memo now provides transcription.
I saw that. How was that?
Yeah. So I was like, well, this is easy because I can simply go down on my quick menu,
set up a shortcut,
and press record. So from a functionality perspective, this now serves its purpose to me. Claude's summary was quite good, but I never used it.
Yeah. Okay.
So for those people who use the to-dos and summary, great.
Perfect. Yeah.
But I want a transcription because I work with a lot of custom GPTs, which is the second tool that I use. So in terms of LLMs, there's OpenAI, and then there's a few other ones. Anthropic has Claude 3.7 now, and then there's some Chinese-based ones. I don't use any China-based AI tools, and I got nothing against them. But if I don't trust it fully, then it's just something that I'm not willing to.
That's important, right? Because it's your data, right? That's the main thing,
right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, speaking of data, so obviously from an accounting and legal perspective, data is super important, and privacy is something that's always up in the air about, from a government perspective. I know some people that doing work with governments, and they're very reluctant to be able to use AI tools. So we will definitely get to the point where it's either completely regulated and approves that regulation, or the governments are going to accept the privacy policies that they have and the controls around that. But for the time being, I take a view to say, if somebody wanted to break into my office and I lock the door, they're going to break in, right? If I have personal or sensitive information, there's actually a way that you can get it. So sure, it would be irresponsible of me just to hand it out everywhere. But to what level of control to what level of effort do I want to put in to hide and not disclose this information against the access of somebody getting it? So I've done a very good job at hiding all my personal information online, and I'll continue on that journey, which is why I don't use Chinese-based LLMs. Because I just simply don't know if this thing that I've been holding so tightly for my entire life is now going to be compromised in this software. However, if it's general information about my business, my turnover, my revenue, that information can be obtained by somebody who's savvy. They could call up and maybe one of my staff members could slip up. That I wouldn't mind sharing with a Chinese LLM. But then I'm like, okay, well, I can share this, but I can't share this. I think that's tricky with AI, is that you don't want to use different tools for different things because it just gets complex and convoluted. So I'd rather go, I don't want to remember what I can use this for and not use it for. I'd rather just be focused on one thing and then just make sure that this meets my needs. So Claude is really good for humanized conversations, but since GPT 4.5 came out, it's also kind of, in my opinion, very close to Claude 3.7, 4.7, 3.7. ChatGPT's got a lot of different models. So if you pay for the full subscription, the $200, you get access to everything. $20 subscription gets you access to most. My favorite one at the moment is O1 Pro. Have you used O1 Pro? So O1 Pro, it thinks about the situation before answering. It actually really tries to stress test its own answers. So with a normal GPT-4 or even 40, it will give you a response pretty quickly. And it's beaming up that single light into space, looking for the quickest thing that's still an immense amount of information, and then coming back with its answer. Whereas O1 Pro still passes through the ozone layer if you haven't given it a good prompt, but now it's expanding out further. So imagine like a Star Trek kind of beam where it just kind of goes out. So O1 Pro looks much wider, and it says, here's a piece of information that I found on this report. Here's some content on our website blog. And then it starts to contradict itself and say, okay, well, this is different to this. Let me go back and read the question again. I think it's this. Whereas 40 and 4 model will kind of go, well, it's one or the other, I'll pick that, without actually knowing. And GPTs, as far as I know, and you know, I think a lot of people who really are at that expert level of GPTs are going to go, oh, this guy's wrong. But GPTs, as far as I know, can't admit when they're wrong. Even if you say to it, please tell me when you're assuming something, it can't say I'm assuming it. It doesn't have the ability to do that, purely because of the vast amount of information. Because if it did, it would assume everything. How would it know?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of limitations with GPT. So before you said that you give it your personal cues when you're creating your post. And I think it's an amazing way to overcome failure of nuance. And knowing, at the level that I work with GPTs, like 3-4 hours a day, knowing what the limitations are is critical for me to be able to get out of it. Because if I didn't understand those nuances, I would be using the response verbatim, and it wouldn't serve me. So I've learned what it can and can't do purely just based on trial and error. And it's been a fun exploration process.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I mean, you've shared a custom GPT, you know, with a group that we are part of, which is EO. And I've shared that with my business partner, and I use that. And that's been amazing. Now, do you want to chat a bit about that?
Sure.
And if you're happy to share that document.
100%. Yeah.
I'd love to share that to the audience as well, and I can leave that in the comment section.
Yeah.
Just maybe what your inspiration was for it, what is it, and it's been really powerful for us. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that.
So you mentioned EO. So there's a lot of what do you call them, like mind groups or brain trusts, like entrepreneur groups. There's a lot of them in Australia. So EO, Entourage, Cub, CEO Institute, no matter what you're part of, it's a great way for business owners to be able to bounce ideas off people, like-minded people. So in the EO community, I'm coaching 10 accelerators at the moment. And the level to be an accelerator is $1 million turnover, approximately. To be an EO member, it's like 1.5 to the wazoo. So without going into kind of business advice, what I generally see is that people at the revenue range of 500K to about 1 million commonly say, how do I work on my business, not in my business? And my personal view is that you can't ask that, and that's not going to, you can't solve that problem at a $1 million business. Maybe at a $5 or $10 million business. I mean, we run a $20 million business, and I've just started to work on the business. So, but nevertheless, the fact is that people still ask that question of whatever size. So some EO members are going through that process. And what I've realized in my own journey is that there's tools, learning, practices, and general business operations that can assist you solving that problem. So you can hire a COO, you can hire an EA, you can have a business that gets you there. But at the end of the day, there's a tipping point, kind of like another analogy, getting to the edge of a cliff and taking the jump and saying, I choose now to change what my responsibilities are to be able to enforce this. Because I could say to you, do A, B, C, and D, and this is how to work on your business, not in your business. Now, it's going to require change in your business, but it's going to require discipline of you to actually implement those things. What I recognize is that even people that are at the level that they can do those things, don't do those things. And it's a lot of limiting beliefs, and it's a lot of, it's dramatic change for an owner to do that. Now, I've had the benefit of having the Smash Room built purely on knowing that I can't work in the business. From day one, I'm like, if I'm going to build this business, the only way it's going to be able to run is if I can completely manage it. And that process has given me an ability to be comfortable with that concept. But even though people want to work on their business, when the reality comes in, they know everything they need to do, they've hired the right people, and they're still difficult to step away. So why is that? And I think that entrepreneur groups are a great way to kind of delve into those mindsets and limiting beliefs, and understanding what's stopping you from doing what you need to do to be successful, whatever version of successful is for you. So I built a custom GPT for myself because through the EO process, for anyone who doesn't know, there's you get assigned a group of people, and it's an amazing concept where you can actually delve into a problem that you're facing, and it prompts you to get to the root cause of that problem. And it's about really showing up and thinking about, what is that problem, right? What is that thing that I'm too scared to say to myself in front of the mirror? And if you can really uncover that and have your peers around you in a safe space help you uncover that bias, it might be something you can walk away and start to think differently and have a different perspective and challenge that thought. But the problem is that it's relying on you to be willing to do that. And it's also relying on the context and content from your peers. So it's a fantastic process. But what I found works for me is the process of doing that with a custom GPT. So I specifically made a custom GPT where it can be my psychologist, psychiatrist, my deep diver, my EO group, it can be everything. And with EO, there's no judgment, and that's fantastic. But there's always a form of judgment, feeling, telling people your deep, darkest secrets, right? What you feel, why you feel that way. And that's just humanity, right? You can't escape that. Even if you say I'm the most analytical person there is, I don't have any emotion, you're still going to have emotion that you're just repressing down inside. But if you're talking to your phone, and you can genuinely, and assuming that the privacy settings are off, if you're talking to your phone in a space where there's no one else around, what's stopping you from exploring some of those deep, dark secrets and feelings and concerns? There's less restriction. So I love removing friction in my life. This is a way that I can remove friction, and without veering off too much, I think for me to be able to be the best version of myself doesn't necessarily require me to do the things I need to get there. It simply just removes the friction so that I can naturally proceed that way. So I see this as removing friction so that I can be the better version of myself. It's just another step going up. So when I created the GPT, I was able to, similar to yourself, upload historic data and in the form of so I had all this journaling and I put it into the custom GPT so that it can understand my language, my nuances, my thoughts. And before I said that I have to understand the limitations of a GPT, and I'll pause this story for a second and talk about by uploading things into a custom GPT, whether it's accounting information, legal information, but really thoughts and feelings can be dangerous because they are subjective and they're momentary. So if I felt, let's say, if I didn't like the color purple a year ago, and I put that into my journaling, and then 6 months later, I developed an appreciation for the color purple, the LLM ChatGPT in this case, won't know which one is correct. It doesn't timestamp things. It's not, even if I was to say on this date, I didn't like purple, on this date, I did like purple, it doesn't understand how to distinguish.
That's interesting. Okay.
So there's a saying that I heard from a really great AI guy who's part of EO, Aaron Zamalek, that said to me, garbage in, garbage out. And essentially what that, and I take that perspective on everything that I use for ChatGPT. So if I'm telling it that I like purple, it didn't like purple here and then I like purple there, that's garbage. Because I can't expect the GPT to figure out what's new and what's not. And it's also the processing power. Even if it did, even if it could timestamp it and go through, why would I want it to waste processing power, figuring it out every single time so that it can then give me the most accurate answer? I want to give it the best information. So every time I evolve in my journaling and say, this is a problem that I'm facing, I'm scared about this, I don't like to do this, and then I get over it, I have to go back in, re-upload the content. Because with a custom GPT, you can actually upload, I think it's 20. I think it's gone from 12 documents to 20 documents.
Yeah.
But if one of those documents is my journaling, I have to be able to go back to the original source file because you can't view a saved file. You've got to make sure you save those files, open up that file and go, where did I say that I like the color purple? That can be a tedious task.
Yeah.
But if you don't manage that properly, you're never going to get the best out of it.
Okay.
So a really simple way to solve this was, I understand it and I'm willing to put the time in. And because the efficiencies that AI has given me, I can spend a lot of time on AI. So I went through the process and I was able to get to know myself to the level that I've never thought was possible. And I remember driving home one day and it was one of the first times that I was actually having a conversation. I used the advanced voice feature. So on the $20 plan, having a custom GPT, I just called it Rick Bazerghi on the left. I'd click it and I'd open up the voice and it would start a new chat. But that would be my ozone layer. So I'm speaking to it on Earth and I'm pinging information up and it's hitting the ozone layer and filtering, reading all the content that I have, and then anything missing or using, let's say Psychology 101, it would go, cool, now I know Rick, now I need to know the psychology, and that's from space. So it would filter its knowledge about me. So specifically when it was looking outside in space, it would say, okay, now I know psychology, but I know Rick, how can I use these two to help Rick's situation? So I was driving home from the city one day, and I love being able to talk to the LLM in the car because I figured every moment in my life I want to try and be intentional. So if I can listen to the radio, or I can listen to a podcast, or I can talk to my GPT. So at the end of the day, I'm gonna be a better version of myself if I'm consuming content. So why would I listen to the radio? So I talk to my GPT when I'm in the car. Best use of time. You don't have to change what you're doing. You don't have to make time for it at home. And I said to it, tell me what my values are. What do you think my values are? And we went through a really great conversation. And I challenged it, and it challenged me. And with good prompting, I made sure that it wasn't just being a yes man. So similar to my staff, I don't want yes men. I want people who are going to challenge me. So I continuously said, this is how I feel about it. Don't be a yes man. Gave me a response. I'd give my response. Don't be a yes man at the end of every single one. So it doesn't revert to its natural habits. It got to the point where it read a statement out, and as it was reading it, I started crying.
Wow.
it was like
crazy.
I'm honestly getting goosebumps now thinking about it. And I've cried maybe 5 times in my life, in my adulthood life, right? I feel like I'm quite numb to a lot of emotional situations. I mean, as bad as it sounds, when my sister passed away, I didn't cry. I've kind of numbed myself to negative situations in my life, so I don't get emotional, which is good and bad. And when it read that statement out, it was so deep because the process of uncovering my values got to a question where I asked it, am I a good or bad person? And I recognized that for a long time, I was trying to be a good person. So doing things that would represent me as a good person, of me trying to live this good version of what a person should be. And the answer to that was profound. And it's something that I've completely reconciled with today. And my, not confidence, but my ability to be able to move forward without having the worry or the concern about, is this decision or step going to make me look like a bad or good person, is completely not there. So AI can help you be more effective in your life, but other than helping with physical tools and tasks, it's allowed me to have a rocket ship up my ass and go 100 miles an hour faster because it's stopped me from the limiting beliefs that I had as a person, which is exactly what EO is about and all these other entrepreneur groups.
That's amazing.
So the great thing about that is that when I hit it, I was like, I want to share this with everyone that I know. But as I went out to my audience, hey guys, you need to create a custom GPT and do this. Cool, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Okay. So I recognize that a lot of people are still in that stage. Yeah. And as AI in the world is becoming so much of a buzz and everyone's talking about it, it's daunting, right? So people who aren't exposed to AI are looking at the world going, fuck, where do I start? Like it's so much harder now and so much more confusing now than what it was before. For anyone who hasn't used AI, if I talk about Claude or GPT 1.0 Pro versus 4.5, they're not going to know what that is. So keeping it simple, I thought, how can I help people get to the point where I'm at, even if they're not leveraging it as I am in terms of business tasks. Let's create a how-to guide that's granular. Open up your phone, right? Download the app, click here, put your credit card information in. Like it's literally step-by-step process. So I created that and I thought, cool, this is how to create a custom GPT. Because there's so many guides online. I mean, this podcast is great because I'm sure you're going to pull out bits and pieces that are going to help people execute on certain parts. But I found it really hard to go on YouTube and find, how do I do a particular task? Somebody asked me 2 days ago, how do you change the privacy settings? And I went on YouTube to give them a link and I was like, 17-minute video to change the privacy? Wow. 11-minute video? Like, I just want to know exactly the steps to go 1, 2, 3, that's what I need to do. Funnily enough, if you ask ChatGPT how to change the privacy settings, it won't tell you. Yeah. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to be the one that creates this. And I'm sure that it's out there somewhere. But I created a Google Doc and I just said, it's public, share it, own it, take it. And then I advanced it from that point because as people created the GPT for themselves, they were like, cool, but I don't really get it. How do I use it? I was like, no problems. I'm going to take you through the next step. Yeah. So now you've got a custom GPT. You've actually physically set it up. You've made an account. You've got the iOS app. That's stage 1. Even if you don't know how to use it, perfectly fine. Follow the next steps. So if you want to use it for what I use it for, as like a psychologist, somebody that you can talk to and just really kind of bounce ideas off, even if you don't know what you want to use it for, just have conversations because it's about kind of uncovering yourself. I asked it a question saying, what are my values? And that led into a profound me crying in the car. So I want people to have the same outcome I have, and it doesn't necessarily need to be, what are my values? It can be anything. So the next step was, this is what it can be used for. So if you resonate with any of these scenarios, if you feel that you're stuck in your business, if you feel that you're frustrated about something you don't know why, if you various different scenarios that could resonate with people. And by reading that, if somebody did resonate with any of that, go to the next step. So the next step is to go give the GPT some context about who you are. Now you can either give it to that GPT by uploading documents into the configurator, or you can simply make a custom GPT, start a thread, and just begin the journey from nowhere. Yeah. So I can create a custom GPT with no history information, no prompts, no instructions. then open up a thread, talk to it and say, hey, my name's Rick. How you going? This is my age. This is what I do. But the most important part is telling it the feelings underneath what you've done. So I went go-karting last week. Great. But I went go-karting. I was a bit nervous when I got there and I hated coming second. So you start to give it the feelings underneath the actions. And that is super important because the purpose of the outcome is for it to understand your nuances, understand what are your limiting beliefs, not what you've done, right? Because it can scale the intent to know who you are and your achievements and things like that. So giving it the information of journaling is super powerful because it's actually you saying your feelings. How did you feel this way? And by having a voice command gets you in the same place. So you build the data out a little bit. Then once you feel like it's got enough information, you start asking questions. If you feel like it's it's not accurate, means you haven't given it enough information. And it's a constant journey. Now, that went viral, which was awesome. And I want to be able to know that people have got even the slightest benefit from this thing, either as their first initial touch point with AI or using it for emotional baggage release like I did.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even think I had any until I went through this process. So I'm really proud of it. I'd love for everyone to be able to use it. However, I need to put a disclaimer that this is a tool that's right now in a moment in time. In 6 months, it may be redundant with a new tool.
Yeah.
So I don't want this to be the be all and end all.